Okay, had some trouble getting myself in the mood to play yesterday. But then I started this turn off the weather, the battleship went away, which means the wind's gone. The wind's automatically gone, there's just no rain. The French activated, got a double activation. They chose to activate, I don't know, these grenadiers and this big cav unit. They shifted them over. The reason to protect this artillery here, this was really in kind of a risk. Them getting the first move and it being so here's the thing, the Russians could get the first move, but it might well be an ineffectual move. Up until noon they've got this terrible table to roll on for their movement. So anyway, I slid over this grenadier unit. The cav charged here, the Russian cav, and then I did a counter charge, had a heavier cav, was able to destroy 2 steps of the Russian cav that way. And then, and that actually activates the Russian cav. And then, this force combined between 2 areas slammed into this thing and pretty much wrecked it, doing, it's actually 3 steps. I only took 1 on it. So it's down to this. And, you know, gained a lot on it. And the Russians are really getting chewed up here by this meat grinder, I guess. I mean, we were talking about, it was an automatic, some 37-5 in the final thing, which guarantees I'm going to be doing 3 losses, one of which can be a retreat. Otherwise, if I hadn't taken the retreat, it would have wiped everything out. So they got this space, and of course that used up one of their heavy units. One of my plans for that was, well, if I want to slip in behind this unit here, then I can get a double unit attack if I gain this territory. And I kind of have done that. Question of whether to advance comes to mind. I can't get 2 units in this space. This is 2 different areas here. So this would be kind of exposed to a possible rear attack. Of course, they swing that thing around, it's a problem, but I just don't want to expose it that much. You know, it's somewhat less odds, but it's tough to get anything. Another unit came slamming in. One thing I noticed, though, I've got this 8th Corps artillery. Now, I don't know how the artillery fits in with all this. Again, because I'm supposed to be moving individual divisions according to the French thing, but artillery doesn't fit into that. And as far as I can tell, you can't actually move the artillery, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I've got another 8th Corps unit. I figure if I move that, I can activate the Corps, some of the artillery for that, and I can activate this sapper. But it does mean, you know, they don't define what the forces really are for the scenarios completely. And yeah, I'm being grumpy about it again. The best thing to do is to have a drink and just play this out, throwing troops together and smacking them together, roll some dice, see what happens. It's a shits and giggles game, though. That's it. And the Russians have gotten a pretty nice string of actual activations. They've got almost all, I think, actually all their infantry. What's this? That's some cav that they got stuck behind the countercharge. But almost all their infantry is back behind the lines. They got to get their headquarters back there. They've got a bunch of cav kicking around here in front of the river still, but still a lot of possibility that some of it can come out. And I think we've got, this is 14th, so I don't know, I guess that's part of the 14th there, who knows. But yeah, it looks like the majority of the Russian infantry is across the river. So the battle's essentially over at this point. There's still the chance to get a few more points off these. I get no points for killing any Russians on this side of the river. Now, the Russians can still get points by killing French. So the French aren't going to want to press the attack beyond the river, but they may want to try to pick off some of these units that are left behind if they can. And pushing into the noon turn, this is where we are. A couple Russian cav here. I took most of my failures at the stuff that wasn't quite across the river. I had one across the river to begin with that took a failure. I'm not going to need to search for these fords. I didn't get cut off that way. French are still coming on. It looks like most of the Russians will get out of the way. We might have some more hits. We might see some little artillery fire. I think the game's mainly over at this point. historically, this is when the main scenario actually begins. So I broke away with my Russians early, but it was still really painful, and I think the French have a pretty solid victory already built up anyway. I think they would have had a bigger victory if the Russians stuck around longer. We'll see how it all tallies up. They scored a few hits here, but not enough. Not enough to swing that. We're talking actually 2, 4, 6, 7, maybe a little over 8 points. They don't even get the 9-point limit. They have to cause another casualty to even things out. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, I don't know, 13 or so. That's enough to get the French at least the marginal victory. Okay, pushing into this last turn, some of the Russian units have pulled back still. We see some more moving out, some of those cav getting out of the way. I found some artillery that should have moved last time, just a cluttered mess of everything. I threw them back behind the river too. Not that they're going to matter much. The French finally got a couple activations, pushed up to here, did some artillery fire. I don't know. There may be... I know that somewhere there's some terrain effect along the river where you can't see things or fire or whatever. I don't want to worry about it. It's just not worth it. And yeah, I mean, look... It's just that it's a foregone conclusion at this point, basically, what the game is. That artillery fire didn't do anything, so it wasn't even worth looking up. The French managed to push into the village of Friedland itself, and they destroyed a cav unit, but the rest of it got driven back. No biggie there. This is all around facing, so they're not really at a lot of risk there. They've got a tiny bit of defensive modifier in their favor. Basically, they're just trying to push forward and force, maybe take a chance where they can kill some more Russian units. But I'd say this is pretty much over at this point. One last strike across here, hit some of the cav there, drove it over. You can see I just threw a pile of stuff on the other side because none of this matters anymore. They can't even get hurt, and I'm just going to sacrifice these couple of artillery here. Maybe they could get across, maybe not. They don't even belong here, but they'll make up for the others that I saved. That's it. That's the battle. I feel the same way I do when I used to play minis with guys who played with an ultra simplistic system like this. Yeah, hey, it's all over. As though they didn't want to finish it. Now, I usually like finishing out games, but this thing is just kind of a headache. And to tell you the truth, I'm kind of regretting the purchase of the second one. I don't think I'm going to get to it anytime soon. I spoke with somebody online, and they said, yeah, they don't understand what people see in this system either. Anyway, as we can see, well, we'll count up the points, but it looks to me like the French got a pretty decent victory there. I don't know what the specifics are of it. Is there any possibility of anything else happening? Yeah, maybe some of these Russian units back here could fire artillery and cause another casualty. The chances of that are fairly low, though, because for the most part, one activation gets me maybe 3, 5 artillery shots. I can only get a hit on a 7 there. Pins aren't going to matter at all. So the only thing that matters is actual casualties. If I get a combination of a couple of units, I could get higher than that. But I just don't want to do it. So I'll come back with the point totals. Alright, so my totals here are 16 Russian casualty points or somewhere around there. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. A little under 9 for the French, 8.3 I think, or whatever. And now we try to figure out what this all means because, hey, every single... I picked the wrong scenario to play, scenario 5, because it is reliant on figuring out scenario 4 and 3's victory points. If you trace down, you have to find out pieces of each of them. But here, let's see. As in scenario 3, but elsewhere it says as in scenario 4 about certain aspects. For example, crossing the Alle in Friedland. Now, those don't really matter. They just say everything back here that's Russian ends up counting as captured. So I can skip that, but we look at scenario 3, which is the historical scenario, strangely enough. But we have a difference, which is the French 9 or fewer steps. Well, that's what we've got. So the level of French victory is increased by 1 because they took very few casualties here. Okay, so let's find us scenarios 3's victory conditions. Now, of course, this is actually covered in the same rules as scenario 4, I think, here, as to what happens if the French capture Friedland, but they had to refer me to 2 different scenarios for that same rule, essentially. Okay, so what did I kill? Well, I only killed 16 steps of Russian infantry, or effective steps, because remember, cav counts as a third. And cav's kind of neat in this game. It's kind of more useful than anything else, I think. Anyway, I don't know if I committed the guard or not. I don't know what the guard was. I don't think it's my reserve corps, which is what I had. I think it's the guard corps over here, which I surely did not use, because it didn't even make it on the board. Okay. So I can ignore that. So I've got a marginal victory, which goes up to a decisive because not enough French were killed. And I think that's about the historical situation. The only thing is it happened a lot quicker. Basically, there wasn't as big a fight. The Russians pulled out earlier. And we can see, hey, they can't stand up against what's there at the beginning either. Which seems a little ahistorical because they did stand there and fight toe-to-toe for a while. But certainly deforming, withdrawing a little bit, weakened that Russian position and made it a little easier to hit them. However, it would only become harder to extricate them the longer I stayed in there. The Russians aren't getting reinforcements. The only question is, do you want to throw like that big first division into play? That's a nice big unit that could do some damage and actually hurt the French a little bit. Maybe, but overall, I think we'd see about the same result. Just the game would have lasted longer and I would have gotten into this stuff, which of course you automatically get into with the 3rd scenario. Alright, I'll come back with a review of the game from my standpoint.